Fearless and truthful.
Provocative and controversial.
We say it like it really is.
With dignity and respect.
Committed to free speech and common sense.
Upbeat and entertaining.
Straight talking and direct.
We may agitate each other and you.
Thought-provoking, provocative and controversial. Hello and welcome to The Pledge. The summer has got off to a glorious start. We're in the midst of a record-breaking heat wave with no end in sight, and a terrific World Cup is just reaching its climax. In fact, things are going so well, we thought it's time to get Carol and Greg back together around the pledge table to see if they can iron out their differences and rekindle the old flame. Coming up, Michelle says we need to share the power. Afua has her say on this summer's TV phenomenon. Carol thinks we should let girls be girls. And Greg tells us why he won't be laying out the red carpet for President Trump. But first, it's me. This week, a Thanksgiving service was held at Westminster Abbey to celebrate the 70th anniversary of the National Health Service. The occurrence of such a ceremony, at a place of worship no less, has rudely awoken me from my slumber. When did the NHS become a national religion? Above scrutiny and beyond question. It's become sacrosanct, haloed above ordinary political debate. If we're told not to question something, then that's precisely the one thing we should all be questioning. The government plans to inject £20 billion into the system, funded by borrowing and taxation, despite claims of a mythical Brexit dividend. Now, those plans may act as a stopgap, but it won't be enough. Urgent, alternative thinking around health is a necessity. Dogma, more of the same, and cash alone will not fix the problem. Nor will shouting down people who genuinely seek solutions in a different way. Just as in religion, I would be more suspicious of the person crying heretic than the alleged heretic themselves. I, for one, wish to keep an open mind about the future of our NHS.
Martin, you're right. I mean, it is one of the things we worship almost in this country, the National Health Service. It's seen as a great service for all, that we gave free healthcare at the point of delivery. I mean, you've only got to go back to remember the Olympics and the opening of the Olympics.
Of course, Danny Boyle ceremony.
Yeah, Danny Boyle ceremony. What did we really celebrate in that? First of all, we celebrated the Industrial Revolution, the first in the world in Britain, and then we celebrated the National Health Service. So we have turned into something very special. And I agree with you, it does make it difficult for any politician to push through change, because any politician who suggests any sort of change gets attacked for saying they want to get rid of the National Health Service, which they don't.
Yeah. Well, I had to think twice before picking this subject today and thinking of what it was I was going to say to open up the conversation, because I feared that attack. And I'm somebody who has actually said the exact opposite, not only on this show, I think the last time you raised the topic, Michelle, but I disputed some of what you said, but also on my LBC radio show. I have long championed the NHS, and I actually appreciated Danny Boyle's ceremony. But what struck me was the fact that this was in a place of worship. We had this ceremony. And I, upon learning, I didn't watch it, but upon learning that this happened, it kind of something hit me, because I'm somebody that's had a past moving away from dogma, and religious dogma to be precise. And it got something going in my mind about the dangers of not being able to question something. It may be that after questioning something, we end up at the same answer as the best answer is what we already had. But we won't know that unless we go through that process.
Well, I mean, the trouble is, it's always the allegation that always comes back is about privatisation.
Yeah.
And that's the great fear. Whereas there are other ways, I suspect, of running a health service that don't require privatisation. But I don't rate our chances of ever introducing them. I agree with you.
Yeah.
I disagree. I have to disagree. I mean, first of all, I think...
With my questioning?
I think nothing should be closed from debate.
Yeah.
I don't like any debate being shut down.
Yeah.
So I think if you feel that it's a no-go area, that you're kind of censored from even asking questions, I would support you that that's not healthy. You know, we should scrutinise and challenge things.
But does that exist?
Yeah, I mean, I think in a way, like, you've managed to find the one thing. I feel like we live in such divided times. We disagree about everything. The one thing that most of the country seem to agree on is that they value the NHS. And 80% of people, when polled, said they would support paying 1p extra to increase funding for the NHS. And that, remarkably, is consistent among Labour and Tory voters, 80%, 82%. So it's almost the one thing on which there does exist social consensus. And I don't really agree with your characterisation of it as a religion. I mean, I did some research into this for my book, and it's really interesting that, for me, it's an identity question. And actually, if you look at Britain in the 20th century, modern British identities were kind of remade after the Second World War. And there is some research that suggests there was a new kind of social contract. You know, society was changing, the role of women was changing, class structures were changing, there was new kind of relationships with social housing. And one of the pillars of this modern British identity was this offering that the state said, we will provide a basic welfare net, we will offer universal healthcare. And that is why Britain is held up as an example in the world. There are so few countries that have made those kind of social rights.
You know, we keep on, you know, we kid ourselves that the NHS is the envy of the world. It is not the envy of the world, because nowhere else in the world has this system being copied. Nowhere. You know, let's talk about that. Is true. Let me finish. Danny Boyle's ceremony made it look like it was the pride of Britain and the envy of the world. It is not. It has become a sacred cow, and it's a failing sacred cow. Have we forgotten what happened in 2013? Sir Bruce Keogh's report into the National Health Service after what happened at mid-staffs, 1,200 people died needlessly, and they died of ridiculous things like hunger, like thirst, like bad hygiene, like neglect. That is still happening in our health service, and we can't be frightened to talk about this. And this is the problem here. You know, anyone who criticises the NHS, they're seen as ungrateful and treacherous, and they're seen as peeing on the work of doctors and nurses. No, we have to look at all of that, and we have to look at the work of doctors and nurses and criticise.
There's a huge amount of criticism and scrutiny around mid-staffs, and rightly. And I don't think it's fair to judge an institution as big or ambitious as the NHS by the failure, and the failures are very serious. But
people dying of starvation.
We could criticise every single institution of Britain from its failures. Can I just quickly bring in a grab, because Greg Milam, the Sky correspondent, made this really powerful piece about healthcare in America, and this is the opposite of the NHS. And I just want to show you the reality for people who are poor in America when it comes to health.
In one of the richest countries on earth, for many people, this is what healthcare looks like. A mobile medical unit in a neighbourhood of Seattle is the only option for some, even those who have jobs.
A number of clients will come onto the van, and it's the first time they've seen a physician in 5, 10, or 15 years.
If you're a person that comes down with a serious illness in this country, and you go in and you have Medicare or whatever, and you have private insurance, you're treated very well. And I think if you're poor and they don't really care as much, they just really don't care.
I think, for me, if people are defensive about the NHS, it's because we all know that nobody would create that now if we were starting from scratch. We've moved so far away from these ideals where we try to create fairness in society. Our society's become radically more unequal since then, and that is what people
I just want to say here that I'm going to bring Michelle in, but I just want to say that I think there is a danger that we go to the American example, which is a terrible example for health service. But Greg's point that there are other services in Europe even that are free at the point of access but aren't our system. And I think there are other alternatives to explore that don't end up with a higher than average death rate for the 12 most common causes of death in hospitals. 8 of them we check in our NHS. So there needs to be, and we also know that we can't keep throwing money at it. And so the consensus you refer to is precisely what I'm saying perhaps needs to be questioned.
Money at it. It's been underfunded for years.
No, I'm not saying we have. Hang on. I'm not saying we have, Michelle. I'm saying we know we can't. Doesn't mean we have been. I'm saying we know we can't keep doing it.
So I completely agree with you, and I think the NHS has become a political football. I think everyone recognises that we need something, but I would actually say that what needs to happen is a proper root and branch investigation of the NHS. We've spoken about this before. It needs a proper review of, is the model that we have fit for purpose? What is the purpose that we actually want it for? And when I covered this topic a few weeks ago on here about the funding, because I was saying that I personally wouldn't pay extra tax until I was assured that the tax I was currently paying was being spent efficiently. So ever since I said that, I've received so many emails and contacts to me from people that work within the NHS who have said they don't want to be named, but they have listed to me so many ways and inefficiencies and challenges and problems that they feel, having worked and currently working in the NHS, that they feel is failing. And that concerns me.
You say there should be a root and branch investigation. There already has been. The National Audit Office has already said this year that it wastes billions. Simon Stevens has said that in certain areas it isn't fit for purpose. Lots of the people who work in the NHS, the big guns in the NHS, there was a guy recently who was in charge of Professor Tim Briggs, of National Director of the Clinical Quality of Efficiency. He says the NHS doesn't deserve the 20 billion until it gets its house in order. So yes, the big guns have already said.
I mean, what is it? The figure that struck me as quite remarkable that we found is that the NHS deals with 1 million people every 36 hours. Yeah. And you think, any institution, any organisation that is dealing on that scale, that is of that scale, will have inefficiencies. It always will. And the question is, I've always thought, is do you need to break up the NHS into smaller units so that actually you can manage them more effectively? I mean, this is like managing the old Soviet army.
Well, that's the problem. What you have just put your finger on is exactly the problem. It's the same model that was started in 1948 that's now managing that many people every hour. Well, so the model has to change.
Do you ever think when you go along to your GP, and I'm older than most of you, and I go along and I think, this is almost the same as it was 50 years ago.
Well, this is the problem.
I finally get a point.
Right.
And I go in, I sit there, I get 5 minutes with the GP, gives me a prescription for something
But
to get me
Greg,
on.
let me ask you, because you're a business person, so if you work in business and you do business transformation, often that results in redundancy at quite a large scale. Do you think anyone would have the confidence to restructure the NHS in such a way that resulted in redundancy?
That's the problem.
Well,
because I don't think anyone has the...
Remember, there's an awful lot of people working, particularly in nurses.
And when I say redundancy, I don't mean in frontline doctors and nurses. I mean in back office.
That's the easy way out. Everybody always says we're going to take millions out of the health service because of the support system.
But do you think anyone's got the balls to actually restructure the NHS
The problem
in a
is
way?
you might even find people that have the audacity to do that. You will not find a politician with the guts to
and that's what I mean. That's what I mean. That's what I'm saying.
Now,
in terms of politicians, I don't think we've got any.
Even our Conservative Prime Minister, let's hear what Theresa May had to say. She's throwing cash at the system, and let's watch this.
We cannot continue to put a sticking plaster on the NHS budget each year. So we will do more than simply give the NHS a one-off injection of cash. Under our plan, NHS funding will grow on average by 3.4% in real terms each year from 2019-20 to 2023-24.
Right, so congratulations, but my point, what I was saying to you, Afua, is that I think everyone agrees that it needs money, but everyone also agrees that no amount of money is going to fix all of its problems. And the problem with Theresa May, what she just said there, is we cannot continue to put a sticking plaster on the NHS with cash, and here's more cash.
But there's a
Something
huge
else is needed as well.
Room. That is so disingenuous, because the pressures on the NHS are not just from a lack of funding from the NHS.
That's what I just said.
They're also from the chronic situation in social care and and homelessness.
But we've got to start talking about solutions like countries like Belgium, like Switzerland. We've got to talk about insurance. We have to, because in all those countries, it is a matter of course they take out an insurance. We've got to stop kidding ourselves the NHS is free, because it isn't. It costs 124 billion quid.
Taking out insurance costs more. Now, I'm not saying you shouldn't do it, but that's what the truth is. You spend more.
Right. It may surprise some people to learn this, but guess what? There is life beyond the M25. And when it comes to Brexit, yes, I am as bored of it as you are, but I can't help but feel it gives us an opportunity to look at how things are done a little closer to home. If Brexit actually happens, we stand to gain significant control back from Brussels, but giving that control solely to Westminster would be a mistake. If we truly want to fix the north-south divide and address the reasons why people voted for Brexit, it's time to give the north more power over its destiny. Take Yorkshire, where I'm from, for example. We're the biggest county in the country, bigger than Wales and Northern Ireland, but we don't have any of the devolved powers that they do. So it's time to devolve the decisions that affect the north to the north.
So I think my starting point is always I'm suspicious of power grabs, and I'm suspicious of the state accruing more and more power. So I agree with you that after Brexit there's a danger that Westminster grabs a whole bunch of powers that used to belong to Brussels that could well be dispersed across the country. I'm also for devolution in principle, and I think that localised government is usually always better than centralised government. So in principle I agree with your sentiment. But I just want you to help me understand what this would look like. Are you saying that as well as those powers being distributed across the country, Yorkshire should get like a Greater Manchester-style mayoral, directly elected governing authority? Or are you saying that your case is only for Yorkshire and other parts of the country shouldn't have devolved powers?
No, so what I would say is... and why I've chosen this topic is I think when you look at places in the north, so many people voted for Brexit and they voted for it for various different reasons. But it's it's indisputable that actually there's a huge north-south divide, and we have these great PR terms like Northern Powerhouse and whatever. But actually, if you truly want the North to prosper, what you've got to do is make sure that the investment is there, the infrastructure is there, you can travel from east to west properly and efficiently, skills can travel, people can travel, all that kind of stuff. So obviously I'm Yorkshire, so I've got a bias to Yorkshire, but this applies beyond. So there is a thing, a proposal that's been submitted called One Yorkshire, for example, where what they want to do, 18 of the 20 local authorities have come together as a collective, and what they're saying is, devolve to us the power, so delegate rather than dictate, Westminster, allow us to have the budget and the capacity to make our own decisions on transport, adult education, housing, those kind of things. Yes, you'd have a mayor, so similar to Greater Manchester, but probably slightly broader, because just for those of you that don't know, Yorkshire, 5.4 million people, it's equivalent of Scotland in terms of the population, 3 times Northern Ireland. It's got an economy worth over 110 billion per annum, and that's bigger than some countries in the EU.
Can I listen, like you, I'm a Northern and I'm passionate about what happens to it. I'm a Geordie. And it's no coincidence that some of the biggest Leave vote areas were in the former industrial heartlands, where people felt that the power, both economic and political, had been sucked away from their regions. And they're right, that's true. But I worry about devolution in the sense that councils all over the country now without devolution are failing. They are on the verge of going bankrupt. Northamptonshire, what's the other one? Somerset is... There was a report out this week saying that Manchester in 4 years' time it could be bankrupt. So what happens if they get these devolved powers, Michelle, and they get given the money? My area, the North East, has now got a devolution deal. North Tyneside, Newcastle and Northumbria are going together under one elected mayor. They're getting 600 million quid from the government. What happens when they run out of that money? Because they can't go to central government again. And I'll tell you what happens. If they need more money, they take it from the people. They take it from the people in tax. And that's why all the failing councils this year are putting up their council tax by the maximum of 6% to pay for it. And that hurts people. That hurts normal people.
Councils are facing bankruptcies because they are dependent on central government funding, and it's been slashed by 50%. So,
but it's also mismanagement.
Well, the main reason is because they've been starved of funding. And for me, I mean, I agree with you, Michelle. My instinct is...
Whoa, steady on.
No, I agree with you. I have a lot of time for the argument that there is a huge north-south divide. I mean, it's shocking that every 12 jobs created in southern England, there's only one created in the north. And I think there's often a huge amount of contempt from Westminster politicians towards the north, which I personally find really offensive.
They've not even responded to the...
Yeah, and actually, let me just play you this from Lisa Nandy, who was revealing some emails that really give you insight into some of the thinking in Westminster about infrastructure in the north, which is so important.
These emails are a disgrace. In them, officials describe key northern routes as valueless, discuss classic handling strategies for members of Parliament, discuss whether to throw a sop to northern passenger groups, and debate whether to propagate myths in order to divert public attention from agreed, planned route closures.
And I'm sorry to say that things like the Northern Powerhouse, which just had its 4th birthday last month, I don't feel like it was serious. I feel like it was electioneering by George Osborne, because what's happened to it? 4 years on, what is there to show? George Osborne said travelling around Northern England should be like travelling around one global city. That's how good the infrastructure should be. There is still no plan as to how those new infrastructure routes would be developed.
In terms of what's happened to... I am sorry to be Theresa May's spokesperson once again, but Theresa May well have a response to... No. There we are. This is what she has to say.
I'll take no lessons from the right honourable gentleman in devolution to local authorities. Which party is it that has established those metro mayors and given them those powers? It's the Conservative Party in government. Which party is it that is doing growth deals around the country, giving new responsibilities and local authorities? It is this Conservative government.
Now, credit where credit is due. I suppose I had to say that after playing that. But anyway, I think the One North proposal is under consideration. But I did want to say that actually, in terms of One Yorkshire proposal, I do want to say that in terms of the bankruptcy and going bankrupt and spending the money and then raising the tax, but isn't that already what happens in London? I mean, we fund our own transport for London.
But the root of that question remains: what happens when a council goes bust when it has devolved powers? Who are they going to go to sort the problem out? They can't go to central government.
Hang on. What's happened in this country in recent years is year by year, the amount of money given from central government to local and regional government has been reduced year after year after year, and it's now coming home. You know, the results are coming home. People are going to get in deep financial problems. And I think that's different from the debate about... I mean, England, this is interesting, it's not Britain. England is the most centralised country in Europe by any means. That, I agree, shouldn't continue. I think you have got to change this structure and this system, and that does mean giving giving mayors and local authorities the ability to raise their own money. When 30 years ago, if you wanted to put the rates up to raise more money to do something in your territory, you could do it.
But you will still hurt ordinary people if in a default.
Sure, but but you can't just sit here saying that's their choice. When they vote for who they vote for, they make that decision. That's what democracy is all about. You're the one who always goes on about democracy.
Finish that point I was going to make, is that if we have it for London, we have the Greater London Authority, we have transport for London, and we pay for all of that ourselves, and we choose to live in London, and with it come the benefits of living in London. So I think, though your point may well be valid, I mean, I recall to my memory US cities, entire cities have gone bankrupt, you know, Detroit and what have you. But the thing is, of course, if we vote that in, and we vote for these directly elected mayors, and then we see the benefits of that, we pay for it in
we've also got to ask the people whether they actually want it. In 2004, when there was a limited referendum in the northeast about devolution, they rejected it by the vote was 80% rejected. Look at the Scottish referendum vote, 10% majority to stay centralised with Westminster.
But you could argue that people in the northeast took the wrong decision. And
well,
actually,
you couldn't argue that at all. That was their decision.
No, they can argue. Yes, but the result has been it's not been to the benefit of the northeast. Let's just look at what George Osborne said when he introduced the Northern Powerhouse.
There are big advantages in having an elected mayor to represent your city, to fight your corner in the world. A true powerhouse requires true power. So today I'm putting on the table and starting the conversation about serious devolution of powers and budgets for any city that wants to move to a new model of city government.
And what happened was Manchester and the surrounding towns and cities grabbed that opportunity and are way ahead of anybody else. And they have also got control of the health service, social care, and all the things that actually you would want devolution to be. I mean, it's done in a very strange way. I agree with you. There's not a democratic process at all. They've been bribed to do it.
Well, I'm astonished. You pretty much all agree
that
with
is
me.
shocking. But there are so many problems in the world, and I'm aware that some of my fellow citizens have been seeking distraction from the horrors of, for example, the global migration crisis or the nail-biting penalties of the World Cup by watching this. The nation is gripped by a bunch of totally vacuous young men and women cracking on in a Mallorcan villa. I admit, I too am finding it strangely addictive. And I find myself thinking otherwise inexplicable thoughts, like how nice it would be to strut around in a thong bikini with all my bits looking perfectly honed. But my bits are not all perfectly honed. Neither, I suspect, are yours. In fact, it's been revealed that many of the Love Island women and men have probably spent thousands on surgical enhancements to achieve their flawless looks. It's completely unrealistic. But that doesn't stop others measuring themselves by it. This week, the head of the NHS said that a Love Island-linked obsession with the perfect body is contributing to a mental health crisis for young people. There's nothing wrong with a bit of fantasising, but when it starts causing real harm by promoting unrealistic, biased, thin, surgically enhanced, Eurocentric beauty standards that add to an already unreasonable amount of social pressure, then you have to ask whether it's time it got dumped.
What do you want to get dumped?
Personally, the whole concept of us being fed these images of perfect-looking people as if it's some kind of ideal.
But that's huge, though, isn't it? Because this happens across magazines. Obviously, all my bits are perfectly honed.
Of course they are,
obviously.
Michelle. No, but do you know what? It's interesting you raise magazines, because I feel like in other areas we've made so much progress. And actually, watching Love Island kind of reminds me of the 90s when I used to read magazines and feel really crap about myself because everybody was airbrushed within an inch of their lives and everyone looked perfect. And we've made so much progress since cancer. Now when you look at magazines, you do see people who look more like you.
But I do feel like if you go to the bars and pubs and stuff, and I look at younger girls, I do think they all look very, very similar. And, you know, they all look a certain way and there's a certain look. And I think it is a shame because everyone's got different bodies. And I certainly have friends that would look at my figure, for example, and they've been on diet after diet after diet, but their physique is just not the same as mine, and they just wouldn't achieve that without being quite unhealthy.
Well done, you.
And no, but what I'm saying is my metabolism is a certain way, and other people's might be a different certain way and someone else's might be a different certain way. And I think that's what we've lost. So, for example, when I do Instagram, I'm very careful to make sure I do it without makeup on. I'm very careful to make sure that I tell the truth about what I look like and don't like. And that's what we're missing at the moment. People are presenting a false reality.
Well, Love Island for me is a kind of like orgy of that.
Please, miss.
Hello.
What else would you tell us not to do?
This isn't about me telling us what to do. Right. I'm questioning the whole culture.
Why do you
putting
watch
so
this
much
show?
Pressure. No,
Why?
Full disclosure.
Yeah, you do watch it.
I had never watched it before I decided I wanted to do my pledge.
I've never seen an episode of this show.
So I watched it for this.
No, but here's
it is strangely addictive.
Here's my serious point. Can I have a serious point, right? Look, we've got an obesity crisis in this country, and we've got the government telling us to ban junk food adverts, and we've got the government telling us where to place sugary sweets in supermarkets. We've got the government telling us that there's a serious crisis with children under 11, where I think it's a majority of them are overweight or obese, and actually up to, I think, around 50% of our population are either obese or overweight. And then you've got the other end of the spectrum, people telling us to ban Beachbody Ready adverts on the underground, and that they're being made to feel insecure because this woman is looking too beautiful.
And then you've got ITV telling us to aspire to all these surgically
It's not telling you to do anything.
People.
No.
Well, they are bombarding people.
It's actually much more serious than this, guys. It's much more serious.
Just the last thing I say. I take it a lot more seriously because it's cosmetic surgery, and so I do agree that it should be regulated a bit more. I don't agree with putting females with breast enlargement in the actual advert. Like, I think a bit like smoking, you shouldn't depict the act of smoking in an advert. But I'm not so sure about banning the adverts because it is already after 9 p.m. Love Island airs from 9 p.m. onwards. So all I want to say is we've got to be a bit careful.
Can I come in with that?
Both ends of this extreme are trying to ban things.
175,000 under 15s watch Love Island. So whether it's before or after, it doesn't matter. But let's get some facts here. Okay, so you've made your point. Let me make mine. There's a parliamentary report that says half of the people in this country have body image problems, to the point where 5-year-olds are suffering from this.
Half the people in this country are overweight, though.
Fine, but they have body image. Even the thin ones have body image problems, Majid. That's not the point.
That's true.
The Medical Health Foundation says that 47% of 18 to 24-year-olds are so stressed by the way they look that they are unable to cope. When you have experts, when you have psychologists and psychiatrists saying that these pressures are they're forcing vulnerable people into terribly difficult positions, you can't just say it's harmless fun, because it's not harmless.
So what do you... I mean, first of all, the nation isn't gripped by it. Let's not kid ourselves. There's 3.5... The popular press are gripped by it. There's 3.5 million people watching. 3.5 million.
That is a high... That's a lot for TV viewing on a terrestrial...
Listen, I used to schedule television programmes. Let me tell you, we'd have taken it on most channels. If that was on ITV, you'd take it off at 3.5 million. This is actually on ITV.
Times have changed, Greg.
No, but all I'm saying is 3.5 million doesn't mean it's gripped. It really doesn't. The nation's gripped.
Extremely high for
certain popular newspapers are gripped, along with the people who... Some people...
Do you know more people applied to get onto Love Island than applied to Oxbridge this year? Which is astonishing.
Can I just play you a clip which I think puts some good context in? This is from the head of the NHS, who I cited in my intro.
Yeah.
We have made some progress over the last couple of years, but it's not just the NHS. The fact is, if you look at the increasing pressures on young people around eating disorder services, we have to think about the whole environment in which children are being exposed to. Some of that is social media, but I mean, even if you take a show like Love Island, look at the adverts that are being shown alongside Love Island. You've got explicit ads aiming at young women around breast cosmetic surgery. That is all playing into a set of pressures around body image.
Michelle, you wanted to say something quickly.
All I'd say is, I remember when I was a teenage girl and I suffered terribly with body dysmorphia. I didn't realise that's what it was then, but I do now. I was bulimic, quite severely bulimic. Then I had an addiction to laxatives, and then bizarrely, I had an addiction to colonic irrigation. And it was all centred around what I looked like, feeling clean, feeling empty, feeling thin. And that was in an era before social media, certainly in an era before Love Island. So people have always been conscious because your body's changing.
At this stage, I do have to resume my role of other people's spokesperson.
You're such a great spokesman.
And read a statement from ITV. So ITV says it takes responsibility to viewers very seriously and ensures adverts broadcast during our programmes adhere to the UK Code of Broadcast Advertising's rules on the content and scheduling of advertising.
And they're hiding behind the fact. They say they take their responsibilities very seriously on mental health, and they're hiding behind the fact that they haven't broken any rules, even though psychologists, psychiatrists, health bosses are saying this is actually very dangerous to stop the ads. It's very easy. Stop taking the big chunks of money from the ads.
But that's what I'm trying to understand.
Cultural question. So a third of our young girls, 7 to 10, feel that they're not pretty
I'm genuinely
enough.
trying to understand.
There are a million young people, including teenage boys, who are using steroids. This is not just one show. This is not just one show.
So would you want to ban both ends of these?
I'm not.
Obesity adverts,
you keep bringing it back
junk
to
food
banning.
adverts.
I'm trying to have a conversation about the cultural pressures that exist on young people.
But what's the solution?
And you keep bringing it back to banning.
What is the solution?
So I'm using Love Island as an example.
She said take the ads down.
I think quite a powerful example.
So she's saying ban them.
I mean, that to me is a no-brainer, right? You shouldn't be advertising cosmetic surgery.
Wait, so do you agree with banning the ads or not?
So many children.
Do we ban the ads or not?
I think the cosmetic surgery ad should not be showed during a show.
Is that a yes then?
Yes.
Right, so then why are you saying
But that's not the solution. That's not the answer. That's just a very
surely your argument is against the whole entertainment.
Yes.
Your argument is against. I mean, you know, just look. All right, just go back to football. Look at every time there is a break in the football, whoever that director is finds the best-looking woman he can in the crowd and cuts that every single time. Now, the majority of that audience is male.
But this is different.
Every time.
This is putting out a message that you can't meet someone and have a relationship unless you have a perfect body.
Can we ban fried chicken ads as well then?
But stop talking about, you're just repeating about that.
I am trying to understand what your solution is apart from banning adverts, because you're saying it's more than banning adverts.
Do you know what? I've watched it, OK? It's full of people who are as dumb as rock. The TV... No, it's not, actually.
No. You haven't watched it.
I know, but I still wouldn't call people dumb like that.
Well, can I say? Nice. The TV company exploits these people. It lauds the fact that they're not very bright.
They have agency.
These people don't know... They don't know anything about what's happening.
They make a lot of money out of it, Carol.
To be fair, I mean,
so that's good.
I just want to say this. It's not necessarily that the people in the house are dumb. It's a show that is encouraging people to behave a certain way. It's very manipulative.
I just worry this is a bit infantilising.
No, it's
we call them all dumb.
Watch it. It is designed to infantilise, literally, and manipulate them into a certain kind of behaviour. Now, I don't think that is really representative of who most young people are, but it feeds this kind of fantasism.
OK, we got to stop.
And that's why it's dark.
We got to stop this now. We could go on forever. This is a good subject. You're watching The Pledge on Sky News. It's me up next, and I'm arguing that the teachers banning skirts in schools need a lesson in common sense. Welcome back to The Pledge. So, what I want to know is just what is wrong with the skirt? It's one of the oldest garments on earth. Gertrude Bell roamed the Arabian deserts in one. Mary Kingsley explored uncharted Africa in one. Freya Stark penetrated the fabled valleys of the Assassins in one. And even Jonathan Ross has been spotted partying in one. So why are they being banned in some schools? We're being told it's all in the name of practicality. But hark, I hear the marching boots of the transgender brigade. Sorry, but gender-neutral uniforms do not require a ban on skirts. Greater inclusion shouldn't come by narrowing people's choices, especially women's choices. And what message is banning skirts sending out? One more of blame than equality. Why should an entire school have to change its uniform because it might have 1 or 2 transgender pupils? There's got to be a balance between recognising the needs and rights of transgender people and helping them, but not by trampling on the rights and needs of everyone else. If we want gender equality, everyone's rights must be respected. And we're not even close to that yet.
I'm in a very strange position this week, Carol.
You're going to agree with me!
I find this a difficult topic, and I have quite a bit of sympathy for what you're saying. So the reason that schools have been trying to ban skirts is that, and I'm giving them the benefit of the doubt here, and I think they're doing it in good faith. And I think what they're trying to do is find a way of making transgender pupils feel comfortable and included that doesn't put pressure on anyone to choose whether they want to wear a skirt, whether they want to wear trousers. So I think it's in the spirit of inclusivity, which I massively support, in a context where transgender young people suffer really terrifying rates of mental health problems, of suicidal thoughts, of bullying, and that continues into society out of childhood. So I think protecting transgender children is something we should all take very seriously.
What's that got to do with skirts, though?
I personally think that a better approach for schools would be to let people choose what they want to wear, rather than banning skirts.
Yes,
and I think that, for me, that would include also letting boys who might be thinking about transitioning to being girls also be allowed to wear skirts. And I want to know what you think about that.
Yes, I mean, I have no objection to that at all.
Because we have had debates about this in the past.
No, I have no objection to it. But what I get cross about, especially in this particular case, what happened to the feminist idea about women's choice? Choice is being denied here to girls in 4,000 schools. For what? For the sake of maybe 2 or 3 pupils in every school? And I don't believe for one second this will encourage inclusiveness. I think it will do the absolute opposite. You don't get greater inclusion by narrowing people's choices, women's choices. That doesn't happen. You know, and they're pretending that this is all about, lots of schools, about practicality, and you quite rightly say that it's not. And some schools have actually said it is about the transgender thing. But you know, you can't change a school's habits, and you can't. The girls, a lot of girls in a lot of these schools are getting up petitions now and saying they want to wear skirts, and there's a very good reason for that, because trousers for lots of girls who are developing, it's all about what shape they are, and a lot of girls are very embarrassed about wearing trousers because it shows more of their shape of the skirt.
Listen,
and
I would have hated to wear trousers at school because I used to get called thunder thighs because I had strong legs, I had curvy legs. Skirts were much more flattering for me. So I can sympathise with that. But I think we should also remember that schools have not necessarily given girls choice. I wasn't allowed to wear trousers. I wouldn't have wanted to, but there are still lots of schools that force girls to wear skirts. And I think, personally, there should be more choice.
This is 4,000 schools, and it's going down a route, and you know, there are, I think it's something like 20,000 schools. It is 4,000 schools.
It
is. And there are
4,000 schools. 40 schools.
Yes, it is 4,000 schools.
So 40, I think it's 40, right? Can I just say that both of you, I think, I agree with you both, actually, and that there should be a choice to wear either, for either gender. So if a boy wants to wear a skirt as well, or if a girl wants to wear trousers, and everyone should be left to have their free choice. I suspect, and this is what really disturbs me, that the teachers in those 40 schools, or the headmaster or mistress or head teacher, have taken a view on skirts specifically because they're sexualising young girls' legs. And I worry that if that's the motivation, and some remarks have come from pupils saying that in one of the petitions that students set up to protest these decisions, they said that from...
Sexualising legs?
As in,
does that apply
somehow
to
it's inappropriate. Exactly. Like, why is it inappropriate for a young girl not to wear a skirt, but for a boy to wear shorts? So the last thing I'll just say is this is why, to both of you now, I'm suspicious of power. Because with good intentions or not, when you give too much power
over children.
Right, so more choice is better. Whether that applies, I think, to adverts.
Power.
What are these schools saying?
Can I just hear? Can we hear from a school and then bring everyone else in? Because it is important to hear what... This is the Priory School, which is one of the schools concerned, and this is what the head teacher, Tony Smith, has said. The reason for the uniform change initially is about equality and decency. It is a gender-neutral uniform. We have transgender students in the school, and we have an increasing number of students who are at the crossroads of understanding around their gender. So this uniform removes the need for anyone to make a decision about whether they wear a so-called male or female uniform. So again, I support the spirit of that. I'm not sure that it's dealing with it.
Have a pangender uniform, have trousers and skirts.
I know Michelle wants to come in.
Yeah, of course.
Well, I am absolutely fed up of this. And that headmaster just said there is an increasing number of pupils that are confused about their gender.
Well, not that many.
Well, my point is, yeah, it doesn't surprise me. Where has all this narrative come from? So, for example, there is 300 transgender children a year starting on a course of puberty-blocking drugs. 300 kids
but puberty-blocking drugs is a really extreme end of the spectrum.
Yeah, but 300 kids. I think we are creating this. We are creating this narrative, and it is driving me insane. We are getting so politically correct. We are getting so worried about offending, excluding, that we are just turning into... I find it odd. I'm trying to think of a word that's not offensive.
We've got to put things in perspective here. Transgender only accounts for less than 0.5% of the population. That, in effect, is about 300,000 people in this country. But we're changing everything to
accommodate. We don't actually know. There are no official statistics about how many transgender.
That's what we know about.
It's toilets, it's uniform, it's language, it's words.
She's right.
Surely there's good reason to be thinking about inclusion, because historically, and until very recently, transgender people were completely excluded. So it's reasonable for us to think about how to improve things.
If the changes can be made without costing anyone else anything, like, for example, the transgender toilets you mentioned, if they're already disabled, Luz, and you just add a unisex symbol on them, that everyone can access them, it doesn't take anything away from everyone.
Imagine it does cost people. It does cost people something, in the sense
the skirts one did.
No, but it does in the sense. If you have people, the big argument, women are terrified of men who declare themselves to be a different gender coming into their spaces.
Well, I think I feel sorry for the people who are running these schools. Actually, I feel sorry because you've got running schools generally, because you are suddenly confronted with an issue that hasn't been a big issue for 20 years, and you've got to make some decisions about it, and they're making different decisions in different places.
Why not just open it up, though?
Well,
skirts and trousers.
Yeah, I mean, I remember there was the campaigns by girls that they wanted to wear trousers at school.
Yeah, so you let anyone choose what they want to wear.
No, you let anybody choose what they want. I don't know, but
you shouldn't be policing what girls wear in school.
We do.
You mentioned before. Somebody mentioned before. The much bigger the debate is the sexualisation of kids inside the school gates and outside of the school gates. That's an argument for another day. But this is anti-feminist. This is banning girls from wearing a skirt to pander to maybe 2 or 3 kids in that school. And anyway, even if you are about to change gender, you're not sure what a gender is, why should a skirt offend you? Why?
And by the way, I bet the boys are wearing shorts in PE.
And it's time to move on. Coming up after the break, why we Brits shouldn't be worried about annoying President Trump. So, the visit of Donald Trump to Britain is nearly upon us. Next week, the misogynist buffoon who somehow got himself elected as US president will touch down here. The question is, does he deserve respect from us when he's here, given that he is the elected president of the most powerful country in the world? Or should we all just let him know what we really think about him and his policies? Personally, I don't believe there can still be a special relationship between Britain and the Trump-led USA. We are just as vulnerable as anyone else to Trump's America First policy, to his erratic behaviour, and to his obvious disrespect for international institutions like the UN or NATO. There are no special relationships in Trump's egocentric world. As such, it's time for the British people to let Trump and the American people know what we really think about the Dumbo president they elected. What have we got to lose?
It might surprise you to know, Greg, that Donald Trump doesn't give a toss what you think, and he doesn't give a toss what the thousands of people that will no doubt line the streets when he comes to this country. Because a special relationship between countries isn't about people. It's about substance. It's about decisions that are made between the UK and the US that affect our national interests. Just a figure here. The US-UK trade relationship is worth 160 billion quid. The UK and the US are each other's largest contributors of foreign direct investment. We have £1 trillion invested in each other's economies. Now, let me finish. So, for us to say to him, for us to give him the 2 fingers and say, we don't want you here, it's stupid and it's short-sighted. The fact is, this government has to deal with him because of this country, because it is one of the biggest countries on the planet and he is one of the most powerful men on the planet.
Right, I agree with that. That's not an argument against the individuals in this country standing up.
But he doesn't care. Do you not get it? He doesn't care.
No, but they care.
No, who cares?
The people who are going to go out and march are going to say, we don't believe what you say, we don't like what you are, we don't like what you represent. Did you just hear
the figures I read out? You cannot pay off the most powerful man on the planet.
You mustn't confuse the relationships between government and government than between the people. This is a guy who's coming here who's a misogynist, who's extremely
Are you going to go on
unpleasant.
protest?
Am I going to go on the protest? I haven't decided yet.
Do you think you will?
Are you?
No, I am not.
So why would
why
you protest?
Why would I go on a protest about Donald Trump? Listen, the American people, or the American system, elected Donald Trump as their leader because that's who they wanted. And actually, there is many people that actually respect what Donald Trump's doing because he is delivering on the campaign promises that he said he would. Whether you like those campaign promises or not is irrelevant. Should we listen to what he actually thinks of all this in terms of America first, etc.?
From this day forward, it's going to be only America first. America first. Every decision on trade, on taxes, on immigration, on foreign affairs will be made to benefit American workers and American families.
America first. Now, regardless of what you think, Mr. Ted, there will be so many people in America going, yes. And I would suspect there'll be a great number of people in the UK thinking, if only Theresa May was sitting there going, UK first, UK people first, UK country first. So it doesn't matter what we all think. And actually, to come back to your question, will I be protesting against Donald Trump? Absolutely not.
Right, isn't it shameful? Afua, how about you?
So I disagree that the American people are really pleased with Trump. He is 55% of Americans think that he is emboldened racist, and half of Americans think he is racist. So, you know, I don't think Americans are enamored of him, but you know what? As we all agree, we're not American. It's not our election. They voted for him, and we can't do anything about that. But what we can do something about is what happens in this country. Now, I'm not going to be totally naive, right? We do deals with America. Everyone in the world trades with America. You know what? Other countries are not inviting Trump on some red carpet tour of the nation to hang out with the royal family and stay at Blenheim Palace. That's what we're doing. And for me, that sends a very dark statement about what we value, which is we have our so-called British values, which are about equality, tolerance, respect. We are happy to trade them in at the drop of a hat for someone who comes along offering us some trade deals. And I just want to remind you what is at stake here, because this is what Trump is about, right? Here is the quote that, you know, you might not have heard it for a while, so I'm just going to do some revision, where he said, I've got some Tic Tacs in case I start kissing her. I'm automatically attracted to beautiful women. I just start kissing them. And when you start, they let you do it. You can do anything. Grab them by the... This is the man who said that Mexicans are racist, who said that Maxine Walters and a Republican African-American woman had a very low IQ, who said that white supremacist violence was on both sides.
The bottom line is we have to do business.
If we don't stand against that kind of president, then we don't stand for anything. And then what does that say about us as a country?
I think I'm correct in saying I'm the only one on this table that has been to an anti-Trump protest. Is that correct? Right. I protested protested the travel ban when he first tried to introduce it. It's since been approved by the courts in America. But I would say I wouldn't protest President Trump merely visiting the country.
It's not merely a visit.
Why would you? It is merely
Allow me just to say what I think. I think there's a difference between protesting specific policies and measures and protesting the head of one of our strongest allies coming to this country to have a conversation with the head of our country. And that difference is important for various reasons. One of them is that specific measures have a tangible result, and protest fatigue and, you know, just basically shouting at people with no end goal in sight, I think is a bit of a waste of time. But the other is, of course, if you're protesting merely his visit to the country, it does give the impression what we're really saying is what the Mayor of London said is you're not welcome here, when, of course, we have to have a relationship.
Imagine, why are all these protesters...
Thank you, Carol. The last thing I'll say, I wish it was always that simple, is that I do worry sometimes, and, you know, I protested the whole travel ban because he called it a Muslim ban, and I was outraged. I do worry sometimes that we are...
upheld, by the way.
Yeah, I know, and I've been speaking against it, but I do worry sometimes that we are also in danger of not giving credit where credit is due. Now, on the subject of North Korea, on the subject of bombing ISIS when it was needed with 0 casualties inflicted, but especially on the subject of the economy, did you know, for example, and I'm rather impressed by this, African-American unemployment is at lowest since... No, wait, 1970 what?
But why?
Okay,
wait,
1972. Because I don't think that's his legacy.
All
I think
these
that's the legacy of the previous administration.
We're
Most
going to
economists say
take
that
to the
he can't take
streets.
credit for that.
Why weren't those protesters out when the Chinese president was here? Why weren't the protesters
out? Though when Saudi came, they
please,
were.
Do you really think they'll be
protest.
anywhere near as many? Why weren't they out when the Saudi Arabian president, when Ceausescu came? All of these people, cruel dictators.
Ceausescu's dead for that.
Doesn't matter. He was a leader. He was in charge of the murderous regime.
I think they don't have expectations from them. They have expectations conversations from the leader of the free world. That's probably why.
Don't you think it's shocking that Theresa May and this government has been cowed in inviting Donald Trump because of the fear of protest? And while they were cowering in corners, not doing it, France, Macron, you just have to let you finish. Macron just jumped right in.
Let's just take a look at the famous moment when they did actually meet. Now, what was wonderful about this moment, of course, is that they were holding hands. But, of course, she didn't hold his hand. That's creepy. He grabbed her hand.
That's creepy.
And would never let it go. The truth is, his America first and the eccentric way he deals with it is not friendly to the UK. And it's not friendly to Europe.
He actually regards $60 billion trade deal. That's pretty friendly to the UK.
No, I don't know if you know about trade deals, but presidents can't stop trade deals. Most trade is done by...
we have to keep it.
No, we will keep it. It won't make any difference. Trade is done by businesses, one to the other.
It's very short-sighted.
If he starts bringing in...
To tee off one of the most powerful men on the planet.
Now, that's your moment.
That's
exactly what should happen. Your moment says, despite him being misogynist, despite him being racist,
and let's not forget,
I'm talking about your protest. I don't think we will give a damn.
You two, I've got an idea. You two go to the protest together, have a nice day out together, bond, and let me know how it was.
That would put me off going, I think.
I'm like you. That's really nice, Greg.
We've all had... They love each other, really.
No,
we've all had those awkward moments when your phone goes off at an inappropriate time, loudly announcing your dubious choice of ringtone to the world. But spare a thought this week for Defence Secretary Gavin Williamson, who was just starting to update his fellow MPs on the rather serious topic of the fight against Islamic State when a certain voice-activated personal assistant decided it wanted to have a say.
Securing the Syria-Iraq border and rooting out the remaining several hundred terrorists who remain in outposts in the Euphrates Valley and surrounding areas.
I found something on the web for Syrian Democratic Forces supported by premonition.
What a very rum business that is.
An intervention, but I do apologise for that. It is very rare that you're heckled by your own mobile phone.
Indeed.
On this occasion, it is a new parliamentary convention, without a doubt. So if I may proceed, Mr. Speaker, without the help and support of Siri.
What a rum business. For that interruption, without any regard for parliamentary protocol, Siri, you're our...
I am Straight Talker of the Week.
That's it for this week. But if you want to join the debate, just search for The Pledge on Facebook or Twitter, and we'll see you next time.